Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of the Press Play and Run podcast with me, your host, Ryan Miller. Not quite sure how it happened, but we have reached the halfway point of the season, with this being Episode 5. As usual, I'll be joined by a guest from the everyday running community, and I'll get you straight over to that chat just as soon as I've brought you up to speed with a bit about my own running and some of the things that we've got going on around the Press Play and Run community, and there is a lot going on. Running wise, it's been by and large a bit more of the same. Chipping away at my training. I've not had too much on the go race wise, but I did have the Paisley 10k on Sunday. So I had set out, anybody who follows me on Instagram at Scottish_runner, shameless plug, will know that I'd kind of set my stall out and said I was going to go and have a real crack at that, and I was hoping to run a sub 40 10k. I've only done that once in a race before, but my pace has been good this year. I've been training hard. So on the day, I had a good run, all going really, really well until 8 kilometres. Well, I'm actually talking rubbish. Somebody crashed into my car in the car park before we even started the race. So it wasn't all going well. It was mostly going well. But during the race itself, I was at 8k, going steady, was 5 seconds up on pace on schedule. Hit a bit of that hill on the canal path. Anybody that was running the race will know the bit. And stupidly convinced myself that I couldn't hold the pace, and I actually stopped dead during the race. I don't know if I've ever done that before, certainly not in a 10k or a 5k or any race of that sort of distance. But yeah, I stopped running, and I think I might have stopped for somewhere along the lines of about 20 seconds, 25 seconds. It's hard to figure out through the elapsed time in Strava, but the upshot of it is that I cost myself the opportunity of a sub 40 and ended up running 40 minutes 15 seconds, which in and of itself is a fantastic time. So no disappointment with the time, but I was actually pretty disappointed myself for a pretty weak moment mentally, probably, when I just got to the top of a hill, and instead of just carrying on and catching my breath on the downhill, and I was right at the very top of the hill, I don't know what I was thinking. A bit of self-sabotage. I could probably read into it and put myself on the therapist's couch, but I don't know why I did it. But yeah, it put a wee bit of a dampener on the performance on the day, but I had a great time. So many good people there. I travelled in with Alison and Mike. We met so many people from Newton Road Runners and from the Press Play and Run podcast community. So no negatives there, but I will be back for that race because it's doable. Sub 40 there is definitely doable. So that was Sunday. The rest of the week has really been gearing towards, I've not done very much running this week. I've treated it as a bit of a taper because I'm going into the Loch Ness 24 relay this weekend. So I'm recording this on Wednesday night. You'll hear this from Thursday, and I leave to go to Loch Ness 24 on Friday. So it's nearly there. I'm in no way organised. I've basically got a tent. That's all I've done. I've not packed any gear. I've not thought about food. But I have tapered really, and I've been doing a wee bit of sort of carb loading this week. No real grand plan on the running. I'm running in a team of 3, so I'm not really sure what kind of mileage I'm going to end up with. I've got in my head probably minimum marathon, maximum 10 loops of I think it's a 7k odd loop, so 70k. I've never run anything like that. I've actually never run anything more than marathon distance. But on this relay format, it's obviously not continuous. Could be running single laps, double laps, will be doing some running through the night. More importantly, there is a great crowd going through here, 20 odd in our actual squad team, broken down into smaller teams, and a range of people from the running community and Instagram that are some of them running solo, some of them running in groups. So really I'm just there for the jolly and the social occasion. If somebody's not got a guitar and a good fire on the go, we riot. So that's going to take care of Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. That race starts right through to Sunday at 10 o'clock. I'll be then travelling home, and on Monday I am going to meet Sarah Pendergrass. And again, if you've seen my Insta, you will have maybe seen me posting about Sarah's adventure. She has come from Australia. She's Scottish but lived in Australia for a number of years, and she's come home to Scotland to take on a huge challenge of running lighthouse to lighthouse. She's calling it Light to Light, and it's running from the southernmost lighthouse in Scotland to the northernmost lighthouse in Scotland via linking coastal paths. So it's over 700 kilometres of running. Sarah is just a fantastic human being, and she is an ambassador. I learned of her journey through Lululemon. She's a Lululemon ambassador in Australia, and through her store manager contacting Jenny, the store manager in Glasgow, they were asking what we might be able to do to have a bit of a link up and support. So it's grown arms and legs. I've had a couple of Zoom calls with Sarah. She's on her adventure already. She's updating. I've seen a couple of reels, a couple of days of updates. She's going very steady. But I'm going to be meeting her to do some running on Monday and have arranged to help her out with some accommodation stuff for the Monday evening. So spend a bit of time chatting. She's got some crew with her as well. I've got her an indoor location for that night, so that'll be a rare night. She doesn't have to put the tent up. She'll be able to use a shower. She'll be able to hopefully eat a nice hot meal that she doesn't have to cook on some kind of temporary stove. So hoping to give her a wee bit of respite from the tent life, but just an absolutely brilliant human, and I can't wait to connect with her and meet her, and I'll be sure to put some of that onto stories and posts and let you kind of see what's happening on that front. Over the next couple of weeks, I've also signed up for the Run Right 5K. So David Wright, who's putting that event on, it's a new organisation. He's worked so hard to bring this race to the running community. He's worked with great sponsors. It looks like he's got a great route. I'm just hoping my legs are going to be in a position to actually go and run that. I told him at the time, I said, I'll sign up for it. I'll definitely be there. What capacity it will be in, I'm not quite sure. Because on the Sunday, again, I am doing the Cumbernauld 10k, but I'm pacing. So my first ever time pacing at an event of that size. I've paced parkrun before, but I'm pacing 45 minutes at the Cumbernauld 10k. So if you see a baldy guy with a big flag sticking out his back with 45 on it, it's not my age, it's the time I'll be running. Make sure you say hello, come and say hi, introduce yourself. It would be lovely to meet you if you're running in that event. It's so much going on, and after Cumbernauld, I have nothing booked for the rest of the year, as far as I know. Although I am partial to getting the odd email from a race organiser saying, here's your ticket for the thing that you forgot you signed up for. But to my knowledge, I don't have anything else after the Cumbernauld 10k. That's going to give me a bit more time to focus on some of the things I've got going on through Lululemon and getting ready for the London Marathon. So I'll be taking a break after that. I will be tailing my training off for a couple of weeks, properly recovering from this next couple of weeks of really intense activity, and then starting to turn my head towards what do I need to do to make London Marathon the run that I want it to be. Because yes, I'm there for the ceremony, the pomp, being the biggest marathon in the world, but also I want to do myself justice, and I would like to improve on what I did in Edinburgh. So there'll be no bones about that, but there's target setting will happen down the road. Part of my focus at the moment is on fundraising. So whilst I'm not in training mode for London Marathon yet, I'm trying to get as much of the fundraising done as I possibly can, and hoping to hit the target before I actually start the training block, because I think that would just take the pressure off. To that end, I've had so much support from people individually through sponsorship, but also this is where Lululemon and Jenny, the store manager in particular, Amy as well, who I'm linked with very closely, have come into their own. They're supporting me to put on a run retreat in a similar vein to the Lululemon one that you'll have maybe heard me speaking about previously that we did back in March. You might have heard me talking to Sophia and Alison about it on an episode. That's going to bring together 30 people from the Press Play and Run community. I put the event into the Facebook group in a sort of pre-sale with 30 tickets available, and it sold out in one day. So people are paying to come to that event. They're going to have a strength and mobility session for runners put on by the lovely Soph Runs Places from Instagram, and Sophie has very kindly donated her time. She's a qualified yoga instructor, and this is what I mean, the community have just rallied around to support me in every way possible. We're also going to have a run together, and I'm going to do a live podcast interview episode recording there, which I've never done an in-person one before, so that's going to be new, figuring that out from a technical point of view and actually securing a guest daft enough to talk to me in front of a live audience. Can't say thank you enough for that selling out in a day. It's just unbelievable, and I know there are people that have since messaged me when I put the news up to say that it was gone in a day that hadn't even had the chance to see the poster, never mind get a ticket. So apologies if you're in that boat. Two things I would say to that. One, try and get yourself into the Press Play and Run Club space, which is on Facebook. If you just search for it there, you'll find it. And the second one being, if the demand is there and I'm still in that fundraising mode, I'm not averse to putting a second one on in the new year when the weather turns. But the venue had a cancellation, which is why this one came around pretty quickly. It's hard to secure that venue. And weather-wise, I didn't want to be taking it on in like the dead of winter in December. So that's going to happen in October, and you'll hear much more about it. The other arm of the fundraising work that's been going on at the moment is to secure prizes for a raffle that I'm going to be having. And again, I've had more support than I could possibly have asked for. So a bit of a roll call here. I've had Healthy Body, Healthy Minds. They've agreed to give us some of their product, and they do like CBD oils and balms for runners. I've had Dry Robe donating just the most unbelievable package. A dry robe itself and a couple of towels and a beanie hat. Kyle in the Wild gave me 2 pairs of absolute beautiful sunglasses, which I'm actually going to buy for myself as well because they're class and I wish I'd just ordered them for myself. Cooper Run Coach app, you know, Pete's always been at my back. Since we had them on this podcast, they're donating t-shirts. They're giving me 3-month codes for use of the app. I've also got Twisted Running are going to donate something, a piece of merchandise, t-shirt for running. We've got race places for the likes of Blash Running, Up and Coming Racing. I've got a few race organisers actually donating places. I've got Big Bobble Hat giving us 4 hats as well to raffle off, and Elite Cereal coming through with nutrition for on the day of the event itself. So I've got so much to be grateful for, and I've got so many of these brands that are at my back and asking for nothing in return. So it's not been they're giving me this and I have to do this ad. They know I don't monetize the podcast. They know I don't have like ads inserted into the podcast, but I am absolutely going to share the products and their generosity because they're actually out there looking after runners from the community, trying to do things for charity. They don't stand to particularly gain from it. Obviously, there's a wee bit of exposure that comes through this. I'm happy to give that quid pro quo if it gets us towards raising money for Place to Be mental health charity because they do outstanding work. They're at my back with this event as well. They've offered support, t-shirts, banners, everything that we might need for the day to sort of publicise and socialise the word of what they do, offering mental health services directly in schools for staff and children. So there'll be much more about that. I really would like to get somebody from the charity on to have a 10-minute chat and give you a better sense of where this money is going and what it will do. They'll be able to articulate it from a different perspective than I will, and I don't want to bring my own experience too much to the fore on that because every school setting I'm sure is pretty different. But it's been a bit of a juggle trying to keep my training going alongside all of this work, but I knew this was part of the pressure I was taking on when you take on a charity place. I've spoken about it. It was one of the things that put me off, but where I am now is I'm confident that we're going to get to this target. I'm confident that we're going to have a brilliant day at this run retreat, and hopefully we can build on that. It's another community event. It's bringing listeners together. It's going to give us more opportunity just to have that connection, get the chance to know each other, and I can't wait to see you all. So that's definitely enough from me for now. That's absolutely plenty. I will fill you in on the next episode, at the beginning of the next episode, on what Loch Ness 24 has been like, how the Run Right 5k went, the Cumbernauld pacing, and most importantly on Sarah Pendergrass, who I will be having on the podcast as a guest, hopefully after she's completed her challenge. I want to get her when she's greeting and emotional after covering 700k through wind and midges, because that seems to be the update so far. Very windy, very midgy, and not always at the same time. With the weekend rolling around, I hope you get out there and enjoy your runs. If you're racing, good luck, go set it on fire. If you're just doing long running, casual running, whatever it is, get out there, get the trainers on, press play and run. By this stage, we know that our podcast guests love talking about running almost as much as running itself. Today's guest has gone one step further, quitting a city job in London to pursue a PhD and research identities of women in ultra running at the University of London. Her research and thinking have inspired articles and discussions in mainstream media, but perhaps more importantly, she's developing a knack for parsing complex data and research into digestible content for the everyday runner, to better understand their place in the sport we love. Welcome to Press Play and Run, Bethan Taylor Swaine. How are you, Bethan?
Hi, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very well, especially since I got through that in one go, so that was all right. Bethan, you will be a familiar face, I am sure. I see your articles shared on my feed. I see your comments, your profile posts shared on my feed regularly. So could we just kick off with a bit of a brief background? First of all, just on your own running, when that started, the why.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. It's a story that's kind of evolved as well. But in the sense of running now, I started in my late 20s and I was at a bit of a lost phase in life. I was working in the city. I was in a fairly unhappy relationship and I really needed a hobby. I just needed something to do. And I tried all sorts of things. Nothing was quite a fit. And the thing that I kept coming back to was, you should go for a run. I was like, absolutely not. Why would anybody want to do that? Absolutely not. Kept trying other things, like there's a baking phase and stuff like that, like stuff that really wasn't a great fit. Eventually I was like, right, okay, I'm going to give it a go. I went out, and that was the moment my life changed. Running taught me so much about what I could do and what I could achieve. I refer to it as a light bulb moment. But without running, there is no way I would be in the situation that I'm in now. It really, and I don't really like the word empowered, but it did empower me to realize what I was capable of doing. Kind of in more recent years, as I've thought about it more, I actually realized I was running long before I claim I started running.
Really?
Because yeah, when I was like 15, 16, I don't know if you've ever heard of World's Challenge, these like expeditions that go off to far-flung places with teenagers
Okay.
for a month. I was all signed up to do one of those through my school. I was going to go to Ecuador. Well, I did go to Ecuador. And as part of that, I was training. And I was also really bad at PE. I had notoriously just a bit crap. My dad was a teacher at my school, so he negotiated with the PE teachers that I could go for runs round Blenheim Palace, which is kind of the nearest kind of big country park to where my school was. So I used to go off cross country running on my own for a double period of PE.
So in lieu of doing other like team
In
sports?
lieu of like hockey and things like that, because nobody needed that in their life. Yeah, I used to go off as endurance training for this expedition I was going on. And yeah, I used to go and run rounds, like sneak into Blenheim through a back gate, run rounds, go back to school. And I'd totally forgotten about it until really quite recently. So maybe it was always there. I don't know. But yeah, the official story is I started in my late 20s. Turned out I was quite good at it. I really enjoyed it. I found an amazing community through running, and in turn tipped my life upside down quite dramatically.
That gap then that happened between school and then late 20s for you.
Yeah.
And that's quite a common thread actually of many runners that I've had on. Many everyday runners were almost forced to do it in some way, shape or form through team sports or
Yeah.
early in their life fall away, then come back. Can I touch on that epiphany sort of thing, that light bulb moment? Did you
Yeah.
know that at the time, literally from run one, this is it? Or was that more when you
Yes.
stopped feeling sick in your mouth?
No, yeah, I knew it. I knew it. I knew that this was going to change something.
Yeah,
It took a few more years to really kind of work it out, but I knew I'd found something that was quite special.
that's powerful.
It really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really powerful.
Because my conversations again would suggest that it's completely personal, that some people get it from run one, the eureka moment. This is going to be the thing, whereas others are like hated their first run, or usually because they set out too fast or they weren't prepared, or they're trying to replicate straight out the door for
Yeah.
a 5k in under
I
25
mean,
minutes.
I'm a researcher, so I did a lot of research before I went out. I had a plan. Probably over ambitious.
You've touched on a couple of other pieces there that I want to come to. Community. This is something that probably, if anything, drew me to wanting to speak to you. It was all the intersections of people I've spoken to previously that you've been involved with. And as I started digging in, I'm like, oh, Bethan knows such and such that I've spoken to, Bethan. So we've had Emancipated Run Crew on. I had Nina and Jules from there. I had Pete Cooper from Cooper Running. And I am an ambassador for Lululemon in Glasgow. And all of these just feature in your story. And I didn't know it's been a sort of domino effect. You run with Run Dem Crew, is that correct? Can you talk me through that relationship, when the community sense of it started to build and how you got involved?
So Run Dem Crew is an interesting one. I didn't come to Run Dem until later. I mean, in the early part of my running crew, I wasn't actually living in London per se. I was living kind of out in Surrey. I was in kind of a weird place with my relationship, and things like being in a club or a crew just wasn't really going to work. Then after that, I was doing my master's part-time in the evening. So I just didn't have time to run with anybody really. And then towards the end of that, I started meeting more people, and a friend I met on like a group run on a Saturday that had been co-hosted with Run Dem. She's now a really good friend, but we didn't know each other and we just got talking. She encouraged me to come along to something called Backpackers, which was a pace inclusive run. It was out of Lululemon Regent Street. It was led by Leanna Du, who's an amazing woman, and it was an offshoot of Chasing Light's crew. So Chasing Lights was founded by Chevy Ruff, who's kind of OG Run Dem, and you find a lot of these crossovers in crew culture, like in London, but also nationally and globally. Everybody knows each other. So I started going to backpackers, started going to Chasing Lights. I was also being coached by Chevy, so a friendship formed there. And then along the way, he was kind of like, "You should go to Run Dem. They're now at Brixton Street Gym. It's across the road from your house. You should go. Tell Charlie I sent you." And that was it. And I went along. I already knew a lot of people. So it wasn't particularly intimidating for me to go along. I knew loads of people. In fact, I think some people were surprised I was new. I ended up getting my husband involved. He's now actively involved in the crew as well. And just over time, we got really involved. At the moment, I don't make it to weekly runs. They're in East London, and I have a 2-year-old. The logistics aren't working out for me right now.
You run when you're allowed to run.
Yeah, run when it's convenient for her. And we still run every Saturday with people from Run Dem at Parkrun. We still go along to the big events and make sure we're there for them. So London Marathon was huge this year. My daughter actually ended up falling asleep in her backpack carrier in the middle of the dance floor at the after party.
I'm sure you would have been close.
I was reasonably close. I mean, again, because we've always brought her up around the community, she knows everybody.
Yeah.
So she'll get taken off by the running aunties.
Yeah.
And kind of disappear.
That's actually a nice segue. You go from running solo or loosely with people to a group. What's the difference? What difference did that bring to your running into your life?
The first time I trained for a marathon, when I was 29, I actually ended up linking up with some other friends that I'd made through social media, and we trained together. And that I noticed that did make a real difference to how I felt about running. It wasn't a chore. It was I was going to go for a run with my mates and go to brunch. It was also at that point in life a really good reason to get out of the house, because again, I was coming to the end of a relationship that just wasn't working. So I had that social element already. I think what's kind of emerged as they've got more involved in a specific community is the sense of kind of solidarity, celebration. We're a crew, we're not a club. So we don't think about pace or performance, although we have some people doing some amazing things. And that, for them, brings a lot of value to their running journey. We celebrate every achievement. We share experiences together. And that's really, I think without that, I think I would still believe that running was for everybody, and I would still be an advocate for pace, inclusivity and diversity in running. But that sense of shared experience and like very overt community and celebration, that means a huge amount to me. And to the degree it's informed my parenting, that's kind of the community and the vibe I want my daughter to think.
Can I ask maybe a potentially obvious question, but also maybe not to anybody listening? What does pace inclusive mean in that context for you of club running? Because I think my mind jumps straight to it's as slow as it needs to be, but that's probably quite a reductive way of thinking of pace inclusivity, whereas I think at the back of the pack.
So I think pace inclusivity is a really interesting concept. Myrna Valerio came up with it, and she's one of the women doing the Further project with Lululemon. She's very cool, well worth a follow, doing amazing things with perceptions of what a runner looks like and what it is to be a runner. She coined this phrase. I adopted it because I think it really captures what I'm trying to get at with running. The ultimate principle of pace inclusivity is that no runner gets left behind. Now, what that means in practice can look different in different scenarios, but the principle is all running is running, no matter how fast or slow, and we celebrate all running as running. So there's no kind of leaving people behind. And I guess I have a really good example of this is last week I went to a run group club thing. It was a press invite, and when we were gearing up to go out, they were like, okay, we're going to do like an easy run, be like a 1 hour 10k pace. I was like, that's not easy. So, oh, well, if you fall back, it's really easy route, so you need to follow it back. And if anybody wants to go ahead, they can go ahead. And there were clear terms of the run. They set out the run terms of what was going to happen clearly. But for a run that's presented as easy, that's not particularly A, easy, or B, inclusive. What I personally would have done would have been, okay, we have a back marker, a front marker. If you could stay behind the front marker and in front of the back marker, we'll adjust the pace. If the front pack are going a little bit faster, we do loops back. We celebrate people coming in. So again, at Run Dem, we do the Tunnel of Love.
Stop. I need to unpack that. You do what? You're saying that as if it's completely normal, Bethan. Let's go. Tell me what
The
that
Tunnel
is.
of Love. It's an arch. You do an arch. Everybody puts their arms up, and as you come in, you run through
Right. You're saying
the
that to me
tunnel,
as
and
if
then you
that's
join at the
completely like
end.
part of everyday running experience. I can tell you that's never happened to me before.
You're missing out. Next time you come to London, we'll sort you out. Don't worry. I think in terms of pace inclusivity and run clubs, it's having clear expectations and it's thinking about what you're saying. So again, I've got a post in the works at the moment about a club that I saw that again said that easy pace. Actually, the 5-minute kilometers they were saying was easy. That's way above average. That even for some fast runners, that's actually not
That's quicker than my easy pace, and I would consider myself significantly quicker than the average. And I'm basing that on what I read of your post about average 5k times, and that's still much quicker than I would be running an easy pace.
Yeah. So it's thinking about your assumptions. It's thinking about the language that you use. It's thinking about the images that you present. So are you presenting diverse images, both men, women, race, body type, etc.? It's also thinking just because something's pace inclusive doesn't mean that you have to go the slowest. You can have pace groups. So at Backpackers we had jog, joggy and joggier and things like that. Do you need a run walk pace group? Actually, are you a performance driven group? And there are performance driven groups, and that's for the right people, they're fantastic. But then how are you advertising yourself? Are you advertising yourself as inclusive and open to everybody? Or are you saying, listen, we're looking for the people who really want to push it, who really want to go fast and are already at a point in their running career where they're, in a pretty
I think I fell foul. I think I fell foul of this on Saturday. So the podcast has gathered steam over the last few months, and we had a parkrun takeover, a podcast parkrun takeover. So we did all the volunteer roles on Saturday at our parkrun, and then we did a social run afterwards. That's the first of the kind that we've had. So the first time, and it was a lot of strangers, like people I hadn't met and some that I did know. You can imagine the range of paces of people there was. And I badged this. I'm just listening to what you're saying and thinking I badged this as a social run. We run together, nobody left behind. The reality was, and I've not spoken to anybody that ran at it individually about it, it started to stretch between expectations of what easy running are obviously so wildly varied based on how quick you run on a normal occasion. And I think I get caught halfway between of wanting to make sure that everybody got something from the run, instead of sticking to the guns of we run together, but your idea about loops is a practical one that we actually use at the club of running and things. So probably some things I would do differently the next time, but it's very easy to get it wrong.
I don't like the first time. So, back in the day, I led for Lululemon out of Covent Garden, and the first time I led a run, I lost half the group
at the back.
Yeah, it was mortifying, but it's easily done. And actually leading and pacing social run groups is a skill. It's different from club running. It's different from kind of performance running. It's different from going, okay, well, we'll have, if you're feeling this pace, go in this group. If you're feeling this pace, it's different from that. Kind of leading an all abilities inclusive running group or run is a particular skill, because you kind of got to temper those who might want to go off. You've got to look after those at the back. You've got to keep everybody safe and entertained. A lot of that comes down to how you advertise it. If you get the language wrong, then you're going to perhaps attract people who only want to sprint off. And not every run is for everybody.
Yeah.
Like everybody has their own, like this run I went to last week, it wasn't for me. For other people, they had a great time.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't for me. And I think there's embracing that diversity too. Yeah. I think races have a role to play though, in being clear and direct about things like cutoffs. Those cutoffs need to be based on actual statistics, not on assumptions. Yeah. It's been so interesting seeing people's responses to my recent post about 5k times.
That one's blown up. I've actually just before we start, just before you come onto this call, I got a text. I want to actually read it to you. So I shared your post, I think yesterday. It was yesterday. And I'm just going to read this to you. So somebody said to me, that's great. Even me being sub 30 minutes, I still feel that's not fast enough. This is from a female runner. Sometimes the park run stats can make you feel a bit down. The percentage good for age or whatever is never good for me. Stupid really, as I know when I'm doing them, I'm just happily ticking over the miles. Funny how much the stats can steal joy from us. Now, that's coming from somebody who just did 70k in the backyard ultra last week. And an exceptional runner, like she is, and her growth has been just crazy to watch. A former guest, people will know who that is. It's Kaylee. It's the Happy Diet. Her handle is. She's just a fantastic human being.
Send me a similar message.
Right. So okay. So same person.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at Kaylee and thinking, oh my goodness, if you, given what you're doing and you're running, are feeling about that, about stats and time, what is somebody just starting, getting into that world? And I'm surrounded by a lot of people coming into the running journey. But your article blew my own assumptions away. I would have said something around 25 minutes.
Me too. Yeah. Me too. I knew that the average park run was around 32 because Chrissy Wellington was quoted in an article that I contributed to recently saying it was about 32. But yeah, the 38 for women did actually surprise me, although once you boil it down, it shouldn't be that surprising. And the thing that I'm interested in next is the gap between men and women for 10k times is actually smaller. And I think my working assumption at the moment, based on what I know, I haven't proved it, this isn't fact.
This is you thinking out loud.
This is my hypothesis at the moment, is that might be because of attrition in women increasing their distances due to time, intimidation, etc. It's very interesting kind of being amongst, I recently paced the London Essex 10k at the 1:30 time, and it is interesting being amongst that group. A lot of people who they would take, for them it felt like a huge thing to be taking on. And I think when you're already in the running community and you already see 10k as a bit of a casual, that's a nice short run.
Yeah.
Sometimes to get that 6 miles is actually quite a lot. An hour and a half out on the road can be quite intimidating for people. So I wonder if there's some drop off there as well around the slower end of the runners, male and female, who perhaps are going, oh, well, my time is like 40 minutes for a 5k, I can't do a 10k.
Yeah.
Or the races look too intimidating to enter, or it'll take me forever, I won't be able to do it.
And they're not seeing race results. If they go back and check last year's race results, they're not seeing times that would be reflective of what they think they're going to do.
Or images.
Yeah. As
well. I think the images are really important. Seeing people who look like you performing like you. And it's I do some work with She Races about start line equality. And it is one of the things that surveying runners puts people off. If races are portrayed as being the toughest ever.
Yeah.
And, it's all kind of wiry blokes and short shorts. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm not wiry, so I'm not taking offence. Definitely the shorts are getting shorter though.
But it's also, that's not necessarily representative of everybody. And there is absolutely a place for races that are the toughest ever, as long as they're explicit about themselves. So I'm not saying the spine race should suddenly, present itself as soft and gentle, because it will never be soft and gentle.
Yeah.
But we're thinking about, the accessible kind of mass participation events. What are you saying about your event? Who are you showing as participants in your event? Who do you want to be participants in your event? And to be honest, if you only want really fast runners, be upfront about it.
Yeah.
I got into it recently with a race that advertised themselves as inclusive and for everybody, and actually the cutoff time for the half marathon was 2 hours.
Yeah.
Which for the average woman in that country, it wasn't the UK based one, but for the average woman in that country, that was faster. They did talk to me, they were quite defensive about it. They were like, oh, it's road cutoffs and logistics and da-da-da. I was like, okay, that's fine, but just don't advertise it as inclusive. That's what your website's doing, and make your cutoffs clear.
Yeah.
Show, like, before people sign up, they need to know that they, I'd be devastated. Like, I haven't done a 2-hour half marathon since I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And to
That's
train,
a really standard type goal for so many runners. That's not like outlandishly slow by any means.
no, it's not. 2 hours for a half marathon is very like, I don't want to say respectable, but it's pacey. It's not.
Yeah,
It's a reach for a lot of people.
See the 5K times that
Mm.
on that post. Is that data taking into account the introduction of walkers into parkrun?
So that data was Run Repeat, and then Runners World requested UK specific details. So it was shared originally by Runners World.
Okay.
It's data. The data will be, I think, 2016 to 19. So it's pre-COVID and pre the Walker
Pre-walker,
campaign.
yeah.
But the average time that Chrissy shared of just over 32 minutes is recent-ish. I think it's from 2020.
Yeah.
So that will come into it. The Run Repeat data obviously went beyond parkrun.
Yeah.
So it included non-parkrun races.
For anybody who's not seen the post, I have shared it via, I think, my own account. I don't think I shared it through the podcast. I will, but I've got it on the screen at the moment. So the average 5K finish time in the UK is 33 minutes 54, just in case people haven't seen that. So that pace is 6:47 minutes per kilometre, or 10:55 minutes per mile. I would be shocked if anybody's not shocked by that, if that makes sense, because that is not the sort of narrative that comes through, the prevailing narrative.
One of my kind of thoughts around it is 30 minutes is something that a lot of people have latched onto. Although a 5K isn't actually 3 miles, it's a little bit more than 3 miles. We've latched onto the idea of 5K being 3 miles, 30 minutes divided by 3 10-minute miles. And so I know I've definitely done that in my head in the past. And it's kind of, is it potentially that we've latched onto that idea? It's also paces have got slower over time. So parkrun paces have definitely got slower. Overall paces have got slower. It's not a bad thing. It just is a sign that we're increasing inclusion in at least short distance running. Other distances are a different question. So that has a role to play. Are we looking back 10 years and thinking, oh, well, also our own past performance changes over time. Yes, you can get faster, but you can also get slower, and circumstances change.
I think it does speak as well to attempts made at inclusivity in running as well, where by the front of the pack at parkrun, in my own experience, anecdotally, is that the front of the pack just keeps getting bloody faster. I see them, our own home parkrun, the times I was running would have been top 10 2 years ago. Now you're lucky if it's top 30, but the numbers have doubled at that parkrun on a weekly basis. Fast, flat course, people are coming through. Yep. But looking at the first timers briefing, again, you do that volunteering thing and you see a whole different side of parkrun. Usually I'm standing relatively near the start. You do your run. I'm too busy gabbing and socialising to really see what's going on around me. But there I watched the first timers briefing. So many more people at a first timers briefing than I think I've ever noticed, because I don't usually look for it. So people rocking up to their very first one, and I keep thinking, how did you not know about parkrun before now? But journeys are launching all the time, so there's something positive happening there. And what I see, I suppose the difference between where you are, Bethan, is you talk about that run crew culture that doesn't, to my knowledge, exist in Scotland to the same extent. Our diversity in population in terms of race, ethnicity is very different population wise to begin with. I think the bigger gap would be the impact of poverty on running, on socio-economic inclusion. And it's a harder one to spot by the eye, but it is the work that I'm rooted in, and I know what impact that can have.
Oh, I totally agree. One of the things that I frequently find myself debunking is the idea that running is cheap and accessible. It's not at all. Like I once costed the basics from decathlon, and that's their kind of pretty much most basic shoe that will see you to a 5k, but not much further. Although I have heard some people think they're amazing. I think depends on your feet. Basic sports bra, basic kit came in about 100 quid. Yeah. Now, 100 quid is a lot of money. And yes, you could just throw on something that you happen to have around and run barefoot if you wanted to. But from a kind of social perspective, that takes a lot of guts to do something like that. That's not the social norm. And you know, you wouldn't necessarily want to be doing that around your local park.
You'd be marking yourself out as different, and it's a very antithesis of the inclusion that we're talking about, of feeling a part of something bigger.
Exactly. So it's a huge issue. Running shoes just keep getting more expensive. Like, I know at the moment, my husband needs new running shoes. We're going to have to work out how to make that happen, because actually that's money we don't have in our budget. And it's this kind of constant thing of, oh, anybody can do it, anybody can put on a pair of trainers and run. Like, yeah, you can initially perhaps just wear your daps that you've got kicking around. You can initially just wear your cotton t-shirt that you've got in your drawer. Fine. I mean, that's how I started. But as you progress and you want to do different things, as you want to explore running culture, which includes racing and, you know, all that type of thing, how are you going to manage those situations? There's also the challenge around other aspects of poverty impacting people's participation, things like childcare, things like
transportation.
You know, transportation. If you're working a couple of jobs, energy. But I think as a community of runners, we really need to get a bit more wise to this, about how we talk about it.
I do see it with runners as well. It's like it's that grind mentality. I think it's quite a pervasive culture at the moment of you just have to want it.
Yeah, it's kind of saying to women, oh, you just have to get up earlier. Oh, you just need to do this. Oh, you just need to do that. And it's like, yeah, but have you looked at structural inequalities?
Yeah.
Have you looked at social issues? You know, have you looked at cost? Things like, oh, well, just go out with your buggy. It was actually, to run safely with a buggy, you really need a running buggy for both you and your child's safety. A running buggy bought new comes in at least £350. Yeah. That's a luxury.
It's like going to the moon for some families. That's how close it is and how tangible it is.
Oh my God, yeah. And like, you know, if you're not putting food on the table, this is not going to be your priority.
Yeah.
And it's access schemes quite often are quite short term because they're politically driven as well, and that does create problems because you're measuring success against 12 weeks as opposed to someone's lifetime and that type of thing. So it's a huge area where I think particularly people who are privileged, and you can be privileged but still have hardships, just to clarify that. I always get pushback when I talk about privilege. You have to look beyond your own experience.
Yeah. And that can be tough. It can be difficult to do if you have no wider experience or things to draw on. But you can see it on race lines. I think this is what drew me into your work deeper and deeper. There's anecdotally, again, since taking up the ambassadorship with Lululemon and trying to work with some local running groups, there's an explosion happening right now in female-only run groups of a social nature in Glasgow, Edinburgh, some brilliant work, groups of 20, 30, 40 runners at a time, wider groups, but that's what they're getting in terms of turnout. And I see it, and I don't see the same for men's spaces. There's a focus on well-being, there's a focus on health, there's a focus on pace not being the driver, inclusivity. That's what's badged anyway on the front. I don't know about the practical experience. There's very little in the way of that for males. But then I go to start lines of races because I race a lot, full of club runners, full of males, full of people that look like me, white bald guys. These groups are not always represented on lines. And that's, I think, where your work's starting to bridge that gap between what running's open to which category of people.
Yeah, and it's also what races you go to as well. So like, you know, you're going to have a different experience at a race that's very much targeted at club runners to a more community focused race. For example, the cross country series that's very much targeted at club runners is going to look different to a race for life, for example. It's and also moving back of the pack. As you move backwards, the demographics
I'll see something different if I step back in.
If you set yourself up to run last, you'd probably see something a little bit different.
That's a good point
as well. But I think a lot of it does come down to race environment and how races position themselves. So I work as kind of event team for Run Dem. I've known the company since it started, and it's done really good things for kind of increasing participation and diversity in running races and making races more accessible. I do great work in Warrington at the moment, for example, and have kind of spread around the country. And I think a lot of that's down to the culture and community of that race series compared to some of the others, which maybe feel a little bit more intense.
Yeah, no, I agree. And maybe just the types of races I have sought and that appear in, because I'm in a club environment, that tends to be the type of things you get through. But that might be a good time to throw a different lens onto that, because I'm want to keep this rooted in the everyday runner. And what types of organisations through your work are you encountering that are making a difference in that and actually taking the bull by the horns? Not to say they're the finished article, but who is making a fist of this?
So I think there's a lot of grassroots people coming up, particularly. I'm biased because I'm in London, and everything I do is based around London. We joke that I rarely leave my postcode.
It's quite a different scenario too, because it's so diverse, it's so big, it's so populated. I've noticed this through my conversations that it is its own bubble.
Yeah, it really is. And we have to bear that in mind. And I frequently remind people that, somebody living in Middlesbrough with a couple of kids working is going to have a very different experience to somebody like me. Like, yes, I have a kid. Yes, I work, but I work very flexibly, and I live in properly in central London and have a particular experience.
But it's a big demographic though, Bethan, and actually we have a significant listenership in London. So even if we're speaking to there, who's making a fist of it there? Because if it can help one person, 10 people, 20 people get involved, it'll be worth it.
So a lot of love for black trail runners. They're doing an amazing job making the outdoors generally accessible. There is Black Girls Do Run. So these are spaces that have grown up from grassroots. Emancipated Runners, who you mentioned. There's lots kind of going on around crew, the kind of crew environments. So obviously Run Dem, Track and Core, Track East, making track accessible. Run Talk Run, which is run by my good friend Jess. She's been doing amazing work for years with their groups. She's also launched Run Club Collective, which is kind of an exchange space for run club leaders.
Yeah.
Which, again, they're having really interesting conversations. Camino. So Camino Ultra, they run ultra marathons and shorter trail races actually in London that are accessible. Yep. They also have their Blue Ways Challenge, which is a 12-month kind of challenge with trail routes exploring the Blue Ways of London, which is super cool. They are the friendliest, nicest people. Who else did I just Maverick race? I'm really excited about Maverick because I actually finally managed to get to one of their races, even though I wasn't taking part in it myself. Last weekend, my husband did one down in East Sussex, and it was just such a nice environment.
Yeah,
it was really friendly, really inclusive. Beautiful routes, really well organised without too much fuss. They're doing interesting things. Their trail routes are accessible by rail, generally.
Okay, so trying to allay some of the transport issue.
Yeah, because that's a huge thing. Yeah. Like if you live in a city, particularly if you live in London, actually, like my brother lives in Glasgow and he's always off gallivanting because it's really easy to get out of Glasgow and get to the hills. If you live in Brixton, like I do, it's a bit of a mission to get out of London. Yeah. Like that's the first part of the challenge. You factor in pretty much an hour to get out of the city before you even get going anywhere.
Is there a danger in these types of groups that their success ultimately prevents race organisers having to be more inclusive, because then it could be, oh well, there's already a space there. So I was looking at something like Black to the Trails, looked like just an amazing event.
Oh, it's so good.
And that was through Nina and Jules, and I saw Trojan in there, people that I've touched base with before. It just looked like a huge celebration of a day, carnival type atmosphere.
Yeah,
really focused on runners. How do you bridge the gap then between an event like that and, well, how do we get some of those runners into historically quite fast middle class type races?
I think the guys over at Black Trail Runners are doing quite a good job at that.
So it is,
Also
right,
Black
that's
Girls.
interesting that you're starting to see that bridge. That's good.
Yeah, so like Black Girls Do Run had a lot of racers take part in Race to the Stones.
Okay.
And actually Race to the Stones have been quite open to groups like that going in and doing kind of a mass participation. Run Dem, Sarah Walsh's group, did the same with women a few years ago now. And they've been good about facilitating groups going in en masse to make statements.
Yeah.
I think Black to the Trails was an amazing day. It was really fun. I haven't talked to them about this, but I don't think they have any plans to make a race series.
Yeah.
I think it's more to say, come in a safe space to enjoy and experience the outdoors.
Yeah, it could be somebody's first time trying it. Yeah, yeah, it's almost a gateway. It's a gateway drug to something bigger.
It was a tailgate way, and it was great. It was exactly as you described. It's carnival atmosphere. It was incredibly friendly. It was a huge social day out. Like we had the dog, we had the kid.
Oh, it looked amazing. I had FOMO just looking at the pictures of it.
And this is why I believe in kind of women only races as well, is because in sport, if you take men out of the equation, and unfortunately sport has emerged as a masculine domain, it is still quite protected as masculine. If you kind of take men from the equation, you can attract women who might not otherwise have felt confident enough to go into that space. But then it turns into, as you say, a gateway drug.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I did that. I can do it. I've got the confidence now to go and be the odd one out, whatever that means to you, on a different start line.
It's something I want to use my ambassadorship to keep picking away at. How do you make a practical impact? And, I don't have the research background in it. I don't want to go down a research route. And I understand in our environment in Scotland, it means something and looks different, but the same issues are still there. So we've got some things in the works, potentially to do a sort of diversity series within the podcast, specialised episodes, maybe in Lululemon shop, and just there's some brilliant groups doing some brilliant things. It's just to shine a light on the good work already going on rather than recreating the wheel. Can I ask about your own running? I want to segue into two things. One, your relationship with Cooper. I'm just interested personally how that came about, and your London Marathon experience, because I'm doing London in 2024. So I'm interested in how you came about to be working with Cooper, and what was that day like for you?
Yeah, Cooper approached me.
Okay.
Full disclosure, I know Jordan pretty well. We run in the same circles, not literally because she would outrun me by a country mile, but she knew that I'd had a baby. She knew that I'd been, for context, my pregnancy was very complicated. I had an emergency C-section. Everybody was fine, but it took me quite a long time to recover. I'd secured a ballot place for London Marathon a few years ago, but I was pregnant when I got it. I deferred it, and I was due to run in the October 22, but a complication from my surgery meant that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And to be honest, the time frame was just too tight. Yep. It was around the same time that the pregnancy deferral policy had changed with London Marathon to be 3 years. And London Marathon were very generous in allowing me to defer a second time. And Jordan knew all this story, and she was looking for a collection of runners who were doing interesting things to come on as ambassadors for Cooper. Yeah. And the company resonates with me. I like that it's small, it's very personal. When you use Cooper, it's like, who's coming back to you. The Refugee Run Club initiative, the races that they partner with and work with are generally organisations that I respect. I'm quite discerning about races and that type of thing. So they approached me and we decided it would be a really great fit. So I started training with them and using the app for my London training. For me, it was great because it was really flexible. Yeah. I could move everything around. I'm a weekday long runner because weekends I do other things. So I could make that happen. There were a couple of blips in my training which we just couldn't make time work for me to get out and train. I got lots of reassurance and support around managing that. And then, it got me to London Marathon confidently. And I had a really, really good day.
I'm not going to ask you
It
about
was
your time. I'm just wanting to know about your experience.
it was amazing. I had such a good time. Like my pacing was on point, my nutrition was on point, the weather was perfect for me, which admittedly I like drizzle, but that's me. The miles just flew. I just felt so confident and so happy, and I just loved it.
Is that the biggest marathon you've done in terms of? Is that the first world major?
That's the only major I've
Okay.
done. Um, so it was special. It's my hometown.
Yeah. I've only done one
Like,
marathon before, so I'm doing this one. I'm doing this one as
oh,
a charity place, and I can't wait.
amazing.
I feel so lucky to be involved.
Oh, it was absolutely just unbelievably good.
Yeah,
So that I loved it. It was really, really special. Like my mum came down. I managed to see like my mum, my husband, my daughter at various points. Obviously, mile 21, which is Run Dem Crew's cheer spot, was really special. Saw various friends along the way. It was just like I just had the best day. I felt so good. I think I had another 10k in the tank at the
can
end.
I have that just in case then? Because when I did my first one in May, there I think I was about 10k short of what I hoped I would be. Not through my training. My training was on point with Cooper, but we got a really hot day. Really, really hot day.
Yeah,
It was so tough.
yeah. Hot day. I can't like I mean I'm really open about it. I take medication for mental illness, and that medication makes me so sensitive to
Yeah.
heat that hot weather. I think if I had a marathon that coincided with the hot day, I'd probably have to DNF.
Oof, it was tough. I mean, I don't even remember the last 6, 8, 9k, but it was like 18,
Oh,
19 degrees after training through the winter. It was just
oh,
it was
that's
tough. I mean,
brutal.
brilliant to have finished a marathon, but I'm looking forward to something different in London where just everything that goes with it, the pomp, the ceremony, what it means.
Oh, you know what? I didn't think I'd be into it, and then I went to the expo with some friends, and we were just all so
In the gear,
excited.
get the jacket, get the t-shirt.
It was like Disneyland for runners. We were just like so excited by everything.
Did you go and find
And
your name and point it, and did you do everything?
I
You're a
did.
complete tourist in your own hometown.
Of course I did. It was amazing. And then, like, obviously, it is like a huge deal for our crew. We were hosting Bridge the Gap, which is where running crews from all over the world get together. And so we had runners from everywhere who'd come to run London Marathon, and Run Dem Crew were hosting. We took them out for a really lovely shakeout run, kind of do a bit of sightseeing, hang out. Like Loki came with me, which was hilarious. We had an after party in a bar, and that was just really fun with like various people DJing. You know, it was we did sign making. We made a weekend of
Yeah,
it, just so special. And like, I've been at Mile 21 cheering for years,
yeah.
and like my daughter's now done 3 Mile 21s, and it was just
Yeah,
like,
something
oh
very
my god,
special for you with it being your hometown and being involved in that running scene because all of that post celebration, that is your own area. That's you're not having to run and then get home and get away again.
yeah. So it's also I was reminded by a friend on this day 2 years ago. I was in hospital
Yeah.
and I was very, very poorly. I had preeclampsia,
Okay.
and some other complications. I had a lot of complications in my pregnancy. And I was talking to my midwife, Vicky, about running. And through my whole pregnancy, the goal had been that once my baby was born, I was going to run London Marathon and take a picture with my baby at the finish line. 2 years later, I emailed my doctors with that picture and was like, it
Yeah.
happened. That was my whole goal
Yeah.
through this pregnancy. And like my daughter's got a little future London Marathon runner t-shirt. And my whole goal was to kind of be at the finish line with my baby wearing that t-shirt. It was just so special being able to like email my consultant and kind of say it happened. Do you
Yeah.
remember
That's cool.
this? And they did. Like I looked back on my pictures a year ago tomorrow. I've got a picture of me in HDU.
A nice marker for how far you've come, but also a stark reminder of just some of the challenges along the way.
Yeah,
Can I
yeah,
ask about your plans for your own running moving forward? I know you're not a million miles away from publication of your thesis. That's in the
yeah.
not too distant future. Is that right?
Very, very close future.
Does that mean running's going to be second place for a little while?
Yeah, so I kind of promised my husband that I wouldn't sign up for any races or train for any races.
You don't even
While
look like you believe that when you're saying
yeah,
it.
um, I've been pretty good so far. Yeah, I basically we reached an agreement that I would not train for any races until my thesis is in, and I'm done with that because it's so time consuming. And when I'm training for something, he actually picks up a lot of
Yeah.
the life stuff. We take it in turns to train quite often because
Yeah,
otherwise it just wouldn't be
we're the same. It's the
sustainable,
only way we can
particularly.
do it with a young family.
Yeah, and particularly as I do
Hmm.
distance, I need a lot of time for that, which means he does a lot more of the home stuff, and then we kind of switch around. I'm due to submit mid-October.
That's really soon.
Yeah, it's terrifyingly close. But then after that, I'm going to get back to it. I really want to go and do one of the Maverick races after last weekend. I want to get out there myself. And then next year, I'm muttering about 50k next autumn.
Nice.
That would be good, but I don't know what my work situation is going to look like. I don't know what life's going to look like
Yeah.
generally. So but I've got
Trail
trail
50k rather than road.
I would probably do one of the Camino routes, which is kind of canal,
Yeah.
traily, so pretty flat.
And what about
Yeah.
the hopes for your work in terms of influence and policy practice? What's the hopes there?
I really love the work that I do around advocacy. I don't see me stopping that. It would be amazing if I could find a way to turn it into paid work.
Yep.
That would be really good. I would love to kind of work around diversity inclusion in running, sport policy type stuff. I'm very well placed for that, given my background.
There's a lot of brands out there really starting to get their act together on this front. So hopefully you're not short of suitors when the word gets out that you're on the hunt.
I want to be in the running space.
Yeah.
And I want to be in the kind of thinking about how we change running, thinking about how we develop running and how we get as much as possible from it. I think sometimes people misunderstand my perspective and think that I want to do away with fast running or make all
Yeah,
races
no,
slow.
I don't get any,
It's not
I don't
that
get
at
any
all.
sense of that at all. There's plenty of advocacy for running fast. You know, actually, the people that are driven by it, I am one. I'm driven by time. I'm not front of the pack, but I'm driven by time. I love the competitive bit.
Yeah.
Running replaced football, and there's no apologies for that. I'm just driven by a different thing. I get something, but we don't need advocates. I think your work's essential, important. I hope you keep doing what you're doing. And there's that, like I said, I see a lot of hope for brands getting their act together with it, race organisers, Cooper, people like Cooper and what they do. It's implicit in their work. It's actually explicit in a lot of their work, which is just amazing to see.
Even by having someone like me as an ambassador for Cooper, it's explicit.
I want to finish off the episode with you the way that we finish off with all guests. We have a quick fire round, and then I'm going to ask you for a question. I'm not going to ask you about a time when you're running, I promise. I'll just look that up myself. I'll look the results up and check for myself. But we do a quick fire set of questions. I don't want you to spend too much time thinking about it, just whatever rolls off the top of your head.
On your marks, get set, go!
Favourite running shoe of all time?
Oh, Asics John Nimbus.
Favourite training route?
I've got a weird one through Ruskin Park and King's College Hospital.
Not through the hospital. I hope you mean around the grounds.
Yeah.
Right
much.
down the corridor.
Sometimes I nip in a good M&S.
Right down the corridor. It's a Strava segment. Proudest running moment?
London Marathon.
Favourite podcast, running or otherwise?
Oh, this is such a hard question. I really like Tortoise Media, so their slow newscast is really good. And I've recently got very into a podcast called Antisocial with Adam Fleming on BBC.
Okay. Is that on BBC Sounds?
Really good. Yeah.
Okay, I'll link to both of them in the episode description so people can find them. Worst race or running experience?
Good question. I've had hardest, but I've not had worst.
I'll take hardest.
Hardest was the Speed Project.
Go to pre-long run meal. So how are you feeling before you go out on your long run?
Toast, usually.
For a 3-hour run, how much toast can one person consume?
I like to run a long way, and I like that I get to take snacks with me.
So you're a snacker on the way. Right, okay.
Oh, yeah.
If you could run alongside yourself as a beginner runner, what advice would you give?
I would tell myself that the plan that I was using had me running too much volume, and I would get injured.
One inspirational Instagram profile you never skip by.
I love my friend Jess. She's always got something insightful to say. So Jess Robson.
Is that the handle?
From Run Talk Run.
Run Talk Run.
I'll check her handle. She's just an awesome person, and she's so reflective. Jessica Mary Robson.
Run with or without music?
Podcast. I run with a podcast or a book.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more a common answer the further in that we get.
I listened to a great book through London Marathon about the COVID crisis.
Because life's not depressing enough when you're trying to run 20 odd miles.
It was really interesting.
Time and a place, Bethan. Time and a place. Favourite park run?
Swansea Bay.
I press play and run because
it makes me happy.
One final order of business. We always finish off by asking the guest to pick a track for our running playlist on Spotify. I could have warned you in advance. I should have warned you in advance, but I didn't. So this would be a song that would be a go-to in a moment of like, I need something. I need that.
Okay, so the song, I'm just looking on my most played at the moment, and this is variable, but I really like Dancing is Healing by Rudimental at the moment. That's a great song. Yeah, music is very big in my house because I married a DJ, so it's a thing. So look, it gets talked about a lot, but that is mine, and I'll probably get a small degree of abuse from my husband about it.
Not when he sees the rest of the playlist you won't. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Could talk about diversity and your work all day. It's right in the sphere of things I'm interested in as well. But also I hope what people do is go click on, have a look, because as a runner, just as an everyday runner as well, what you do is inspirational. You have a different element to that with all the research, but I don't want the running getting lost in that picture. I really appreciate you giving your time up to do this. I think you are, as I said, right in the wheelhouse of the kind of people I want to put in front of everyday runners just to challenge perspectives. So thank you so much, Bethan.
Absolute pleasure. I love talking about my work, so it's always nice to have an opportunity to do that.
Thank you to you, the listeners, for joining us for another episode of the Press Play and Run podcast. You can really help to support the podcast by subscribing or following on your podcast platform of choice and by leaving a review. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Press Play and Run Podcast and to add the Press Play and Run playlist on Spotify. We'll be back every 2 weeks with new episodes, and please be sure to keep an eye on our Instagram page to find out which guests will be joining us. Until then, keep getting the trainers on, press play and run.